Okay, well, welcome. If you watched part 1, you'll understand that this is part 2. This is marathon warrant shows. We've got 49 articles, the biggest warrant I've ever seen. So we did up to Article 23 on the first hour, and now we're going to start on Article 24. Just in case you didn't watch number 1 and you fell asleep, I've been told many of these shows are good to put you to sleep. Let's start with introductions. Michael.
Hey, my name is Mike Walsh. I'm chairman of the Milford Select Board.
Hi, I'm Brant Hornberger. I'm the vice chair of the Finance Committee.
I'm Carly Kernan. I'm a member of the Finance Committee.
And she growled when I said the future vice chair. Okay. The favorite article for tonight. 24 is the zoning article. Michael.
Which is it's an article that talks about limiting or not allowing any more standalone transportation terminals. And, Al, I was just speaking about it earlier, not to use a name, but the biggest standalone, terminals that we have are the Amazon terminals. But I think you have to take a step back just for a second and take some time and go look at Industrial Way, go look at National Street and the amount of money and the jobs that have been created. And I'm not saying for or against, but as every select board meeting we have an Amazon update. They're very open. They communicate with us all the time. So I think that this is an important article because we need to take some kind of action so that everybody can't just open up a standalone terminal. But I also think that we have to be open and realize that, and again I'm going to use their name, how Amazon in the last 3 to 4 years of my time on the Milford Board of Selectmen is really trying to become a good neighbor. Really, they gave $25,000 to the youth center for an art program. They've given countless amounts of money away around the community, and they tell us all the time, please let us know if there's something that we would like you to do. So I believe that, yes, this is an important article so that we can get control over where they're going to be.
But it's not just Amazon. It's
No.
anybody.
Yeah, anybody.
Because, when you're a 600-pound gorilla, it's hard not to have an impact on the room.
Yeah. Well, and I use Amazon, but everybody knows UPS is getting ready to do the same thing. The gentleman that did the tour for us on National Street was with Walmart for 17 years. He said the size of this warehouse is nothing compared to what Walmart has around the country. I'm walking around this building, and so, Walmart's coming, Federal Express is coming, they're all going to get into that, and I think it's very important, it's very important that we need to get it under control of where they're going to be in our community.
Article 25, the biggest article on the warrant, 9 pages of the Selectmen's warrant.
Yeah, there's I think 9 pages that would make it seem fairly complicated to have more than a few dogs in your house. I don't think there's a financial impact to this one, but there is a tremendous amount of detail about kennels and personal kennels, or I guess commercial kennels. I can't really add much more to that besides if you're a dog lover that wants to have more than 4 dogs, you should probably read this one.
This will be my prediction, the one that takes the most time.
Oh.
It's like the chicken one years ago.
Yep.
$110 million, 30 minutes, we're done.
Yeah.
2 hours later, we're still debating chickens. I can see these 9 pages. Somebody saying, well, why doesn't you have to have a pink bow on the... But it's all about, we don't have a zoning bylaw or a bylaw to deal with pup dogs. Now we'll have a 9-page bylaw to deal with dogs. Insurance Committee, adding a new member is Article 26.
So I think this one, admittedly, I'm not exactly sure what the town's insurance advisory committee does, but this one is to switch the committee from 8 to 9, which would make sense to have an odd number if there is a voting practice. And I think as it's been discussed, and I think will be discussed, the finance director, Zach Taylor, would be the ninth
Well, we
person.
want somebody representing the town that's in that position. I mean, right now, Zach Taylor seems like the logical candidate, but it doesn't really matter if it was him or the treasurer or the town accountant, but you want somebody in that mix to be representing the town's interest.
Well, I think what's also important, Al, is that, and you make reference to it, how do you have a committee with an even number?
Yeah.
That doesn't work.
It just,
Could be difficult.
you'll be there all night.
Yeah, having an odd number, just hopefully you never have to. I mean, we have 15 on the finance committee. The only time I get to vote is if it goes 7-7.
You get to be number 15.
I
Lucky
get to be
number 15.
I get to cast the 15th vote.
Yeah.
So it just makes sense. It's like the select board. Can you imagine if you only had 2?
Or if you
Yeah.
had 4?
Or if you had 4? I'm mad at you. I'm not going to support you.
Yeah.
So, okay, number 27.
This is very important. If anybody has had the opportunity to go down, I have twice, to look at that property, thank God nobody has ever been hurt down there. And, you know, it's time to take it down, you know, take responsibility for it, clear it, and get it away.
And I mean, realistically, it's not going to cost the town any money because we're going to build that back.
Right.
You know, it's just, an eyesore is annoying.
This is a safety act.
This is a safety issue because, let's face it, not that we would have ever done it when we were kids, but a place like this is just logical to draw kids into play,
Right.
and it's just not safe.
No, it's not at all.
So we're looking to add an extra, what, $100,000? But again, my understanding is if whatever we have to spend to make it safe, it's going to be paid by whoever wants to deal with that land.
Right.
Number 28, a fleet maintenance supervisor for the highway department.
Well, I'll tell you, for the this one came a little bit newer to me, so I probably don't know a lot about it. Besides, you know, what you've got here is that they want to add. The personnel board had put together a motion to add a fleet maintenance supervisor, the highway department. You know, I haven't been in any conversations with them. I can appreciate they've got a pretty big fleet of vehicles, whether it's the highway, actually like the road repair, or the actual snow plows, or the sidewalk plows. I imagine they do that, but I actually haven't had any conversations with them.
I think the biggest issue is that they're always chasing their tails. There's nobody in charge of scheduling all the maintenance, implementing all the maintenance, and making sure it comes in within budget. Everybody does a little bit. And what I understand that the good Dr. Chris Foley wants to do is set somebody up to be the manager, to plan all these things, to make sure that he's getting the best deal he can for the maintenance. Now, my understanding is he's not adding a person, that he's taking a retiree and switching, not adding a new person, but just saying, okay, here we go, we're blessing you, you're now the manager.
Right.
But he needs a position created for that.
Yeah. And I think what Scott is trying to do, Al, is that, you know, there are many different town-owned vehicles that are going many different places to have things done. And I think what he's looking to do ultimately is bring them all under the venue of, you know, being repaired at the highway department. And that may be 2, 3, 4 years down the road, but I think that's his thought
Well, he has
process.
said that he would like to offer this to all town vehicles,
Right.
which just makes all the sense in the world.
Sure does.
So that Department 1 is sending to you, Department 2 is sending. If he can consolidate it, he gets better pricing, he gets more leverage. It'll take a while because
Yeah, you gotta work the bumps out.
you got to work out the details of how you take a green truck and a blue truck and send it to the same place. But I love the idea.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I'll give you an example. If you have 10 police cruisers that are all Ford Explorers, well, they all got the same size tires on them. And so you go out, you put them out for bid, and you
Yeah.
buy 100 of them in a whack, you know, and you get better pricing, you know. It makes perfect sense.
Well, you would know. I mean, you've
Yeah.
run a service organization for how-
37 years.
Replacing the fence around the library, number 29.
So I think this one's been discussed for a while in terms of the need to replace. So I think it's become time. I think we've heard some stories in the recent past of maybe some issues where they have found drug paraphernalia or other alcohol type items. So it's a way to kind of keep the library safe and kind of keep that area in a safe manner, I guess, plus beautify as well as just fix the fence that probably has been needing repair.
The good news is, from what I heard, the needles have gone down. The nips are up. So somebody's back there drinking. I guess, to me, that's better than shooting up, because it's going to be hard to really hurt yourself on the nip compared to you can get stuck on a syringe pretty quick and easy. But overall, it's not good, because
Right.
glass can break and people can get hurt.
And I think the discussion we had was obviously, the hope is that the fence deters. We recognize that that the fence will not stop the situation, but hopefully it deters and it
Yeah, and
starts
this,
to
you're
kinda-
right, we took this up 3 or 4 or 5 years ago to put a fence, to replace the fence because the wooden fence is falling apart. I mean, when Paul Revere put it up, he did a good job, but now we have to take it up again because Sue Edmonds, the library director, when she started getting bids, she didn't have enough money. And rather than cheap it out or only do part of it, she gave back the money to the town and said, as soon as I have a real plan, I'll come back to you. Again, back to cooperation, because a lot of towns wouldn't do that because you never know, there's no guarantee you'll get the money again.
Right.
But this is a vinyl fence. She evaluated all sorts of fencing, and this came out the best one. Bylaw amendment, number 30.
I think this is important now, and I just got some information on it the other day. It was interesting that originally was North Purchase Street was maintained by a group of volunteers from the community. Well, as time would have it, unfortunately, those volunteers have either passed on their own or gotten to the point where they can't maintain the cemetery. And so, this is a very important article as well, because now what it will do is it'll put the two cemeteries, Purchase Street and Vernon Grove, under the care of the trustees of the Vernon Grove Cemetery, which makes perfect sense.
Well,
Perfect
this
sense.
started years ago when people who had their loved ones at Purchase Street Cemetery were saying, when the grass gets that high,
Yeah.
it doesn't really show respect for mom. So they asked us, is there anything you can do? And we got some extra money in the Parks Department budget for them to maintain it and cut it. And the cemetery, Vernon Grove helped. But this puts it all together.
Right.
We got two cemeteries in town. It doesn't make any sense to have them separated. They're now going to be handled by one group.
Yep.
Okay, number 31, Planning Board bylaw.
So a non-financial article in front of us here from the planning board, and it's really targeting their site plan review, and they're replacing some language in the specific section of 1.15 with some new verbiage just to improve the process. It's not a financial measure. I take it at their face value that this is going to make the process better.
We got to trust. Planning Board's done pretty well by the town. When they say that this will make it easier for them and better, this is typically one that I know the FinCom typically will look and say, they know a lot more about it than we do. Let's refer to sponsor and trust them.
Exactly.
Okay, next one.
32, I think we're on. So this
32, the Parks Department
Tractor.
octopus.
And I've learned a new word every time they've come in front of us to explain what these are. But I think this one is a classic example of just a piece of equipment that's out of life, out of useful life actually, and the tools that go with it. So this is a $74,000 tractor, I believe. that will just help them kind of continue to do their job and do all the grass cutting and everything else that they do throughout the town. Again,
Well, that's
to
why I call it
beautify
an octopus. When you
'cause it
see
goes
that,
out, right?
it's all these arms and
Yep.
legs, and maybe it's a spider more than, but it does multiple functions.
Mm-hmm.
And the question always comes up is, why can't all the departments share one octopus?
Nothing will get done if they
Well,
all need one.
They all need it at the same time. You know, I'll share a tractor with you. You get it in December. So this is just routine.
Routine.
Oh, Carly, number 33, more of your favorite
More
topic.
my favorite. More doors.
More doors.
These are the other garage doors. These are at the highway department, and I think what I was impressed with when Scott came in was they've done this over time. So these are the last 10 doors, I believe, and he has kind of chipped away at this. He has told us some stories that have been amazing to me. You know, it's the end of a snowstorm, and they're trying to shut down for the night, and the garage door doesn't.
Well,
and
garage
now
door-
it's stuck. And now they got a couple folks there trying to get the door down. So these are the last 10. Al, I don't remember off the top of my head, but I want to say that there was 20 maybe in total, 15 to 20. These are the last 10.
He's been taking a few doors with excess budget money.
And he's been chipping and chipping away. So this is $90,000 for the last 10 so that they are operable and can
And if
open
anybody
shut.
wonders why a door can cost $9,000, drive down Central Street and look at the size of those
They're
doors.
massive.
Those are big doors, and those getting stuck open in the winter, it's a mess. That's a problem.
Well, especially you've been plowing all day, you're dog tired, and somebody looks up and says,
It's not shutting.
okay, Carly, climb up there and pull it down.
I'd need 10 fingers and a lot more strength to probably pull it down. So
Okay. Number 34 is a sad article, but absolutely needed. You're talking about setting the minimum acceptance criteria, that if the select board or somebody has appointed you to a position that you asked to be appointed to, and you don't show up to be sworn in, you don't show up to do the minimum amount of things, you can be replaced.
Yeah, I think some people in the public might not realize, you know, as somebody that's, you know, on an appointed board, myself on the finance committee, you know, we are subject to, you know, following open meeting laws, conflict of interest training, and obviously signing off that you've taken that training and certain standards around that. So that, you might think of volunteering in town and getting involved in volunteering. It's just a little volunteer project, but there's a lot of laws to follow and some process to follow to make sure that, you know, you're doing the right thing by the town and ethically for the town. So, you know, you look at something like this, and they're putting some teeth behind it and saying if you aren't swearing in, if you're not taking the trainings, if you're not following open meeting laws and doing everything you're supposed to do, that you could be removed. So you're right, it's sad because it's kind of something necessary. It's sad that it's necessary to do this, but by the same token, the town needs all of us to follow the law.
Right. Yeah, I can remember, Al, you know, years ago, you know, when I first started to serve the community, and somebody said to me, well, you know, the first meeting, everybody's there. And they said the next meeting, there'll be half of us here. And the last meeting, everybody will be back. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And they said, well, just get their name on the plaque. So this is an article that's going to hold people accountable. You know, you step forward and say you want to serve, you know.
Well, fair is fair, Michael. If Brant and I come to you as select board and say we both want to be on the blue committee, it's not fair to deny me if you appoint him and he doesn't live up to what he promised.
Correct.
Absolutely. And then you have an open spot.
And then,
Right.
Yeah.
you know, we all understand that, you know, on the FinCom, there's 15 people. From time to time, somebody gets sick and they'll be out for a while. I don't think anybody would step up and ask them to be removed. But if you're not going to ever show up,
Right.
it's different.
you know,
Ever.
we need help. Okay. I can't say Scba. Because
You like to say scuba for this
prefer
one.
that.
SCBA, to me, that sounds like scuba tanks.
Or it's self-contained breathing
Apparatus.
I believe. Yep.
But these are the tanks on the firefighters.
This one I found interesting too. Let's go back to the communication and the collaboration. So when we talked to Chief Nelson on this one, this was, I think it was maybe last year or the year before, they said we don't need any more firefighters. They were good with the staff that they had, and then last year they did add 5. And what this article is doing is it's getting 5 more SCBA full pieces of equipment such that we are now fully SCBA'd. The ratio of SCBA equipment to firefighters that we have in town is now 1-to-1. So every firefighter, if called to a fire, will have the capability to have a piece of equipment. And that is the full equipment, which I thought was interesting too. And we do talk about, you will see coming up probably next year, the tanks inside them need to be replaced over time, but they have a 5-year life and they're very specific in terms of, or sorry, 13-year life. Not
13.
Yes, 13-year life, which we challenged that and we said, can we do it faster? And they both said, nope, this is the right cadence on that. But this is to get 5 new physical setups so that we can have a 1-to-1
So it's the
ratio.
pack and the tanks. You know, and the question comes up, does every firefighter need a setup? And I think the real issue is maybe not, but in the middle of a fire, I don't want to be sitting there saying, Brant, can I borrow your tanks? You know, or I'd go in and help him, but
But I can't.
I don't have the tanks. We saved $800. So I think this is step one. And as you say, every 13 years, they have to be replaced.
And I think the cost to replace them, if I recall, was like $1,500 per tank. Each piece of equipment has 2 tanks. So the cost changes, but from my perspective, I don't think this is a cost play. I think this is a safety play and doing right by our Milford firefighters.
And we owe it to the firefighters, you know, their safety. I mean,
100%.
you know, one of the things that we're dealing with now is the amount of cancer among firefighters, as everybody knows, and now their equipment that they go in, when they slide their hand through the jacket, there's a special band that locks so nothing can go up their arms in the fire, same around their neck with the headgear that they wear, and they have, you know, we only have one right now, and it's in the Birch Street station, but when they come back from a fire, they actually take
Clean
their
it.
uniform, or whatever you want to call it, safety gear, put it in a machine. It's like a stand-up washing machine, and it washes everything off of it. Because if they put that back on again after going into a fire and it's got carcinogens on it, they're in trouble.
You know, it's one of these things where I can't appreciate what they need because, thank God, I don't have to run into burning buildings. You know, until I walk in their shoes, then I'll say you need it or you don't. But until I do that, I just got to trust them. And again, the fire chief, TUI Rev 1, TUI Rev 2, I mean, there's a tradition that Mark follows that they've been pretty straight all the time. When we were tight, it's like, do you really need that engine this year? No, but will I get it next year if I need it? Yes. And we put the money aside to make sure that, you know, the engine won 2 years later when he said, I need it now. Okay, we don't have to worry about the money. The money's been tucked away in the mini stabilization account for when you needed it.
Well, a classic example of that was the year we paid $1.1 million for the new ladder truck, and Billy came back the following year and wanted $650 for the
engine.
Yeah, and we said, geez, can you wait a year? And he said, yeah, I'll wait a year.
Okay, 36, painting the senior center, and we're going to have 2 of them, one to paint the inside, one to paint the outside.
And they're not in order?
No. But we'll skip it. I mean, is there really, we have a building, it needs painted, it's too much money, yes. Painting the town hall is too much money, yes. Painting any building is too much money, yes. But what choice do you have?
Right.
You know, you're not going to have it run down and ruined.
Yep.
Joking aside, though, I think for the public, it is important to know there are 2 different interior and exterior, and they're actually almost the same price. So
80 and 81.
80 and 81. So that there are 2 articles for 2 different types of painting.
And that was the interesting part when we started looking at the list, because we saw painting 80 and saw painting 81. Is that those are 2 different.
Right.
It was just too close. It slipped through the cracks on the list, but there are 2 different ones. They are on the warrant is separate. Okay, Article 37.
No brainer. Need to make the chairman of the Water Commission a member at large at town meeting. Makes perfect sense.
Kind of hard to argue that they shouldn't be.
Right.
Article 38.
So Personnel Board, article. So the Milford Personnel Board wants to look at the position of the assessor/administrator and take it from a level 3 salary to a salary level 4. So this is one where I'd look at it and say, I'm inclined to trust the judgment of the board.
Yes.
I don't have any ability to have a better opinion than theirs.
In today's day and age, you don't want to lose people over a couple shekels here or there. We want to pay competitive wages,
Right.
and if they're saying that that's what you have to do to be fair, I agree with you. 39, updating the lighting at the library.
So I think this is switching over, Al, all the fixtures at the library from, I'm going to say, regular lighting to LED lighting. And I think what's important to note here is we're not doing it just to switch over. I think we're doing it because of the age of the parts, and some of the pieces of equipment are starting to age out and they need to be replaced. So there was a very diligent process that they went through, and they brought in National Grid, and there's a grant involved actually, to change it all over to LED lighting. And I think the payback period, I believe, is about 5 years or so.
5.5.
We'll switch over, and then the cost of electricity and the location will go down.
And the other thing is, we had been carrying on the long-term capital plan, upgrading the electric. Because Sue was worried she didn't have enough electricals coming into the building, that she'd have to increase the grid. But she believes now that with the efficiency gains we get from all these LEDs, that we don't have to increase the power. So this will be 72,000. We save 13 and a half a year, so it's about 5.5 years.
Financially, it makes sense.
Number 40, Concom articles.
Again, Al, this goes back to what, we spoke about earlier. These are 5 parcels of land that we're going to give back to the Conservation Commission for the protection, for the town of Milford. That were part of that original, and I forget the number, whether it was 85 or 89 parcels of land that originally, we said we wanted to auction off. These are parcels that we've, have been said that they should be under the best control of the Conservation Commission for the safety of the community of Milford.
And we have to understand, the Con Commission is part of Milford.
Yeah.
So if we ever needed a little piece of dirt back and it made sense, nobody says you can't ask for it back.
Right.
It's not like we're giving it away to Franklin or Medway or something that we could never get it back.
Right.
Vernon Grove mapping, cemetery mapping software.
Sure. So, we met with trustees from Vernon Grove Cemetery, and it was an interesting storyline to hear that, a lot of their tracking of where people are buried, is paper-based and, really relies on a lot of institutional knowledge. And, what we have here is a project to spend $25,000 to have a software system, upgrade that, and, you can appreciate that with modern technology, you can do a much better job than you can with pieces of paper and, hand-drawn maps and things like that of the past. And then you create, I believe it's cloud-based, you create, something that's stable for the future, and you can have, turnover in personnel and not rely on that institutional knowledge anymore to keep track of where the open spaces are and where people are.
And this is something the FinCom pushed years ago. Because God bless her, Lynn Lovell knew every grave there off the top of her head. You could say, oh, Joe, yeah, he's 3 down, 2 across.
And the records were in her basement.
On a piece of paper.
On pieces of paper. If it was a piece of paper, we'd be lucky. So this gives us the ability to actually, as you said, gain control over knowing, because there are a lot of people with the gene tracking now want to know. And this will be nice because somebody anywhere in the world will be able to dial in and see the tomb.
I believe they even said with this software, there may be the ability to kind of link it up to the town website, so if folks can, if you can log on and search that way. So
now, again, a tradition that's been kept in Milford, we need a new brush truck. Years ago, the brush trucks were $400,000. This is decades ago, $300-some thousand, and I can't remember if it was 2E Rev 1 or 2E Rev 2 that got an Army truck.
Oh, yeah, that was Billy.
That was Billy?
Yeah.
And instead of costing us $400,000, we got the truck for free from the Army and then spent $50,000 putting the water system on it. A new truck is apparently $400,000 now. And Chief Mark got a grant for 90%. So our part of getting this new truck is $40,000.
There was actually a great article on the newspaper, I think one day last week, that between Chief Nelson and Deputy Chief DeTore, they wrote it from Milford. It seems like town of Framingham did it, as well as I think the town of Hopedale. So there's some great grant money out there. The price tag for me was staggering when they came in to talk about it. It was a very large number, but it's grant money and we only have 40,000. But I think what might be helpful for folks to know too was today the water truck is just an off-roading type of vehicle, and this one they're trying to make sure that within the funds they can make it off-roading as well as, I'm going to get the word choice wrong, kind of being able to be on regular roads, such that if we needed to have a water truck somewhere where when you're on a regular road, it could get there and have a blinker and have lights and things that the current truck does not have, because it just kind of goes up in more the off-roading
Yeah,
capability.
the off-road is critical because there's no hydrants out there.
Right.
Especially in Milford.
But at critical times, sometimes having this balloon of water show up can get you over the hump.
Yeah.
Right. And they were saying the one that we have today is just more of an off-roading vehicle. This will be a dual purpose, which is nice.
Again, when you get it for free,
Right. You can't.
Yeah.
you know, we couldn't tell the Army, hey, could you modify it for us? 'Cause
Yeah, and I stand corrected, Al. That might have been John that did that.
I can't remember.
Yeah. Now that I say that.
They all blend together.
Yeah. Yeah. But after what we just went through this summer, if we don't have a way to fight those fires on the power
Well, I mean,
lines and everything.
Think about words like the U-turn. To old Milfordians, we all know what the U-turn was, you know, up by Mill Pond Circle in there.
Yeah.
And for years, you'd smell back there, and then you'd see the fire. The kids were going up there lighting campfires and having long discussions in the woods. And you'd call the fire department, and they'd have to rush up there because they'd be the only ones that would rush into the fire.
Right.
And they needed water. And somehow carrying it in a Dixie cup doesn't really work real well. So this lets you bring a large amount of water right to the source so that the firefighters have a chance.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, from a judicious approach, they write the grant and it's the town's responsibility is only 10%.
Right. Are you on the finance committee or something, being shocked at $400,000?
I think for a vehicle, it seems like a lot, but after I was explained what it does, it did not seem like a lot. So
Senior Center exterior painting, we've talked about it, number 43.
Yep.
Is that the 80 or the 81?
That's the
the 80.
80.
I mean, it's a ridiculous amount of money to paint, but everything's a ridiculous amount of money now.
Yeah.
And they've gone out, Rick will get bids and he'll do the due diligence. We need to paint it.
Yep.
Oh, the Utes,
Yes.
adding high vac for the Utes.
I think this is, as you know, I should say to the three of you who are all finance committee members, this should be the last phase of what needs to be done to the youth center. Now, we're still dealing with the water intrusion issue, but that's against the contractors and legal. But this is the last phase of what we need to do, in the basement of the youth center to get rid of the mold, to improve the ventilation system. It definitely has to be done.
And it's also defensive because if you don't take the humidity and the heat out of the main basketball area and underneath,
Yeah.
exactly, Kelly. Yeah. The wood is going to warp.
Right.
So you put all this money in and you're just going to ruin the wood.
Yeah.
And my hat is off to the board members and the youth center because many decades ago, it had a very different mission because they came in front of the FinCom and wanted support to hire a director. And 2 or 3 of us said, you'll never get our support until you make it all-inclusive. Because they were telling us that this is only for troubled children. And typical children in Milford weren't invited. And I was like, no, every child in Milford should be invited. I grew up playing ball hockey in the Armory, right? We were all invited at one point, but somehow, for the best intentions, of focusing on at-risk children, they were trying to chase away other kids. And it really bothered me because I don't like anybody being called a name that's negative.
Right.
And this current board and the board before it really turned it around to where now they have all sorts of programs. During the pandemic, they set up a pseudo classroom because a lot of people couldn't afford $600 a week to have their child being tutored. So they could go there. So it's really come a long way. I mean, this puts us up, what, $6.5 million investment?
Over 6.5. Yeah, over 6.5.
So, you know, it's a substantial investment, but as long as they keep doing what they're doing, it's a nice thing for the town.
Well, you know, Al, and I think what's important, I'll never forget, I went up, when we finished the Fields project, and I went up to the Fields project on a Sunday, and at the time I was chairman of the school committee, and this gentleman walked by me and he said, "Oh, that's the chairman of the school committee." This gentleman walked over and he identified himself to me. He was a Framingham firefighter. He said, "I live in Framingham." He said, "We would never have anything like this in Framingham." And I don't mean to pick on the town of Framingham, I'm not, but the youth center is another example of what we do in this community for the children. You know, if we don't allow those children, and you know, Tom O'Loughlin, when he was chief, I said to him one day, I made a remark about standing in front of Store 24, and he said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Those are the children we can see. It's the ones we can't see."
That are
If
the
we
problems.
give them a safe environment to go to try and figure things out, because there's a lot going on right now, and that's what the youth center gives the children of this community, a safe environment.
And they've been amazingly creative with the space too. I mean, I have two daughters that play softball, and that's where we do winter training.
Yeah.
There's batting cages in the basement. They do fielding up on the basketball court. So they're really utilizing the space in all aspects of it at all times of the day, 7 days a week. So it's impressive.
But that's what allows us to fund the youth center.
Yeah.
It's not for good, bad, or indifferent groups
No.
of kids, because I don't believe there are any bad kids,
No, there's no such a thing.
you know, but we got 4,500 kids in school. This takes care of a segment of them, just like the football field takes care of a segment, the softball field takes care,
Yeah.
you know, and as long as they keep pushing it and involving more and more kids, I mean, $6.5 million is a lot of money.
I tell you, Mike said it in the first show, it seems like a little while ago, earlier in this warrant, you know, if you're suspicious or doubting, you know, walk one of these places.
Yeah.
You know, and I could
Yeah.
add to the stories that you guys have all shared, but, you know, when you think about these spaces, you know, finally, you know, getting air conditioned and dehumidified so you don't damage it and have mold issues, or the same spaces where your kids are playing softball in the same places that got turned into classrooms, you know, it really hits home. So if you're suspicious or doubting, take a walk through there.
Take a walk.
It's an incredible place.
Okay, we move on to a very complicated one, number 45, a new liquor license.
Yep. You should probably take this one.
Yeah, I can. This has two sides to it, Al. You know that, I should say, again, the Finance Committee knows that one of the things that the Select Board is looking at is liquor licenses that are out there that are not actively being used. But what this does is this allows us to go petition the state to have one more in reserve, because when they did the construction at the old Kmart Plaza, there was some shuffling that went on there to move some licenses around, and so now we don't have one. So this is going to allow us to go to the state and say, we'd like to have one in the bank, but the Select Board is still going to look at the licenses in the town that are not actively being used.
Now, people don't buy these licenses, right?
Oh, some do.
No, but I'm saying a new license. You're not charging them for it.
No. We grant it.
So it's not like when you bought a medallion to drive a taxi in Boston that you paid $300,000, and if I'm inactive, you're going to take it away.
Yeah, no.
These are granted, so it's not like they're out of money, out of pocket.
Right, but one of the problems that you have is that the licenses that are out there not actively being used can be sold.
Right. So they don't want to give them up because I can sell it and make profit on selling it to a new restaurant or something.
They sit on them and they wait and they watch what's going on in the community, like the development of the old Kmart Plaza, and all of a sudden that license now
Is worth money.
is worth some serious money. you know?
But can you just take it back?
That's a great question. Yeah, I believe legally we can, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we move to 46. The little tractor
Oh.
that could.
These are the sideway tractors to remove the snow on the sidewalk. You know, when you think about sidewalk tractors, and I think the dollar value in this is about $169,000, which
Yes.
that's a lot of money, you know, but when you
About the
sit
same.
with Scott Crisafulli and really talk through what's involved, you know, we learned that there's 30 miles of sidewalks that they clear. And they have 4 pieces of machinery. Last year there was one that was broken all the time. And these things seem like it's like a hard job. So I think they take a lot of wear and tear. So when you're down one, it's a problem. And you know, the principal problem with getting the sidewalks clear is the kids can get to school. The kids can't walk to school if the sidewalks are covered in snow. They'd have to step out into the street. It's a safety issue. So you know, when you hear $170,000 for a fleet, for one more to add to the fleet of sidewalk plows, it is a head scratcher. And you think, wow, that seems like a lot of money. But then you stop and you realize there's 30 miles of sidewalks, and you have to have the sidewalks open for kids to get to school. And sidewalks are, you know, a unique space where you're not going to drive a pickup truck down them. You know, you have to find a way to clear these things, and that's the going rate for a piece of equipment to do the job.
And I think the problem is it's not just 30 miles. Scotty could handle 30 miles over a day. It's snowing at 5 a.m.
We have to
He's
hurry
got to
up.
get it 2 hours, or because I think he had said he can live with 3 working units. The problem is he's had 2 working units, or one always down last year. So this would bring him back up to what he needs, because at the end of the day, it's too late. You got to do it first thing in the morning so that the kids can go to school, and then at 3 o'clock, so they can walk
Clear
home.
again. And in between, you try to take care of Main Street and other areas so that the businesses can thrive.
Well, to Brand's point, what do you do if you're already short-handed and now one goes down? Now you're really in trouble.
Yeah.
You know, and we, the taxpayers, are going to be the first ones on the phone saying, hey, you know.
Well, you know, again, if you delay school for 2 hours, the ripple effect
It's huge.
to the moms and dads that, you know, okay, which one of us isn't going to go to work on time? Because one of us has to, you're not going to leave a first grader at home for a couple hours.
Yeah.
When I call you, leave the house and go to the bus. You know, that,
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like that would actually work out perfectly.
I don't think so.
Watch
Okay.
another cartoon? Sure.
Yes. Cemetery leaf blower. $10,000. Go ahead, Carly. Oh my God.
Yep. I'm going to put this in I was
Reminds
amazed
me
at
of
the
the
price
Morgan &
tag.
Morgan commercial.
I think what I didn't really have a full appreciation on until they came down to speak was the amount of space that they handle, number one. Number two, the difficulty of the terrain, right? So you're dealing with headstones, you're dealing with, it's not my backyard and I'm gonna go straight across, right? They're working around it. And so this piece of equipment, I think, number one is a more high test blower at $10,000. And number two, they said it could be done a lot faster. So then it cuts down on manpower, folks that were doing double jobs, just trying to get this done. So it's an efficiency play as well as probably a pure financial play as well.
This is a big blower. This is not the steel. I mean, I thought I had a big blower when I went and bought a steel 850. And, you know, after an hour or so of carrying this thing on my back, okay, time to take a break. This is not, when you look at how many acres they're clearing,
It's 18 acres of developed space.
It's a lot.
you can't walk around 8 hours with a leaf blower on your back and expect to survive. So this is a riding monster that has power. And that's why it's $10,000.
Yep.
And we live in New England, and there's a lot of leaves. So I mean, to keep up with something like that with a backpack.
It's the
one is
select
difficult.
board's fault. Issue the memo, sir, that said no leaves will fall after this day.
After the
I'll
leaf
put that
pickup,
on
no
the
more
agenda.
leaves.
We'll bring an oak tree in.
48, we're sitting here with more conservation land.
Again, Al, it's just a no-brainer. It's transfer of land to the Conservation Commission. To your point earlier, you know, there's nothing that says that later on in life, if we need it, we can't go say, can we have that piece back?
Yeah.
Because it's owned by the town.
And I think it'll continue. We keep finding these little slivers that people have abandoned. You're not going to get any tax revenue from it.
No.
And the last one, the dollar transfer to stabilization account.
This is my favorite. And so this is one where we have a proposal to put $3 million into stabilization, and it's last on here. And one of the reasons I think it has to be near the end is, we don't know what town meeting's going to do with a lot of the other things. So that gives us the opportunity, to be flexible with that if we don't approve something that's on here. And you think about, well, why would we want to put aside $3 million? And that's the important question. And it's really because the school's coming. With a high school project that's not defined but clearly in front of us. When you look at our finances right now, we're in a great position. But we don't have a lot of debt that rolls off, in the next 10 years. It's slow, but I think our treasurer's done a great job of managing our debt, having us in a real low interest rate positions, but we don't have a lot that just expires and reaches maturity. So the expenses that we pay won't just organically drop off. And putting aside some money now makes it possible to pay for those projects in front of us without having to do any of those dirty word things that you talked about earlier. You don't want to have to get into, even talking about, what some towns have to do with debt exclusions and overrides and things like that. Squirrel away some money now, then you can cover the expense when you have a big project like this. So I'm passionate about this one.
Well, I think people, when they question us saying there's a school coming, so we just did Woodland. And you got to remember that we have 5 major schools. School lasts 40 to 50 years before you have to do something, either renovate it, build new. So every 8 to maybe 10 years, we're going to be facing a major expense. So when people say, why do you keep putting money away? Well, the high school, I think we'll be lucky if we get away with 150 to renovate
Sure.
it.
Yeah.
Right? So that means 70 of our money, 75 of our money. If you think about it, Woodland added $4 million to our interest, to our debt service. And we talked about it at the financial team planning that we got to look out 7 years and put a stake in that says somehow we have to be ready to add $7 million of debt service to our budget. And increasing taxes just isn't feasible. You can't just tax people. We keep thinking about people who built Milford, the seniors. These people are living, some of them, on $1,500 a month. How they do it, I don't know.
Right.
But to just say, just throw on like towns around us, well, we're going to do a debt exclusion. We're going to add $500 onto your home bill for the year. Holy moly, that could mean somebody doesn't get, or the rations their insulin, doesn't get a meal. So, what you're saying to me is the most physical and moral way is we're able, can you think of one project we haven't funded because of money?
No, I think people come to us with really good projects that are thoughtful. We have to fit them into the timeline that makes sense, but
Yeah, but Mike said it. We've gone to the chief and said, can
Yeah.
you wait a year? Can you wait a year and a half? And we fit it in. The jigsaw puzzle, it's Tetris on a global scale. I just think it's really, really critical that we keep in perspective that in about 6-7 years, we're going to have $7 million. And Woodland won't be done by then.
Right.
It'll still have a few years. So we can use stabilization to get us over the hump, but it's still going to be pretty substantial.
But I think also, Al, is that, when we talk about this, is that when we eventually go and we do fund a project, we always talk about, well, we've been putting so much in stabilization since, it's no different than your own savings account. We're looking down the road all the time. And I said to somebody today, I said, the position that this community is in today is because of not only the good management that comes out of town hall, meaning Rick and Zach and Chris and Paul Abendanza and Tommy
And Brownie.
Brown, but it's also the finance committee. And I can tell you, having served 9 years on the school committee and in my 5th year as a selectman, there's been nights where I've gone before the finance committee and said, oh my God. But at the end of the day, when you take a step back and say, you know what, they're right. this isn't the time for it. This needs to go. How many times have you and I had the discussion about capital plan? You know, get on the capital plan. If it's an emergency, then that's different. But no, we're not going to move you ahead of somebody else that's been sitting there for 4 years. Well, it's management like that that puts us in the positions that we're in, you know? And we don't bend unless it's an absolute. You can prove to us that it's an emergency. No, you're waiting, you know. And it's that kind of management that puts the community in the position that it's in.
And like right now, we've got $11 million. Let's assume the pool goes through. That takes you to 5, down 6. What are we going to spend the rest of the money on? Well, 3 into stabilization. That puts you at 9, 8 out of the 11. So we leave 3 million. We're going to fund some of these capital articles because we have opened up a little bit. You know, we were hoping to get away with $1.5 million this year. Yeah, that ain't going to work. There's going to be 1.8 of capital. So that leaves us with almost $2 million that we could take forward to the spring town meeting. And realistically, can you think of anything that could eat up that $2 million, Brant?
You can, you know, I mean, the easy one that comes to mind is the schools. I mean, if the feasibility study goes through, that's $1.5 million, right? So, you know, we put together the application. Obviously, it's the school committee and with administration put this forward, but you sort of enter a lottery process and you don't know what the timing is going to be, but if it comes back and goes our way, that next step cost $1.5 million. So, yeah.
Feasibility study.
So all of a sudden, you're sitting there on $500,000. I mean, the good news is, if an emergency came up, we're covered. I mean, we've got a good insurance fund since we're self-insured. Used to cost us $400,000 a year, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're self-insured, so it costs a fraction of that because you have a $250,000 deductible or something large like that. But we could cover it if something happened. You know, we've got the stabilization, we've got the no-name mini stabilization. You know, it's all there in case we need it. But whether it's this year or next year, that $1.5 million, that feasibility study's coming our way.
Yep.
You know, it's kind of like the fire truck you mentioned, the ladder truck.
Yeah.
We put 1.1 million. When we asked Chief Tui, do you really need it this year? He goes, I could wait another year. Okay.
Yeah. We'll put this 650 somewhere else.
Right. So overall, that 11 million, it's nice because we can do the pool, we can do stabilization, we can do all sorts of things without affecting our budget.
And if you remember, Al, what we did with the 650 on the fire truck is we didn't spend it somewhere else. Remember, we moved it, put it into a savings bank. So the following year, when he came back, all we did was transfer it back over.
Yeah, it went into the mini, because out of stabilization is a 2/3 vote on town meeting.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Out of the mini stabilization, it's 50% vote, so it makes it easier.
Yeah.
Now, one question, we got a couple minutes left. One question that always comes up is, do you have any idea how the articles get numbered?
I don't, to be honest. They just come to me.
I don't think anybody does. I mean,
And I'll be honest with you, I don't think I brought tonight with me. This is the original one I got. Then I got one from Charles Body, and he exactly did that. He went in, and all of a sudden, Article 9, he said, why isn't
9
this article?
became 11, and
Exactly. That's how
now
my
some of it makes sense to me because you wouldn't want the pool article coming up as number 46.
No.
Because by then people are kind of burnt.
Yeah.
You know, I'd rather.
Especially with 49 articles.
It's tough.
Oh, but even if we had the normal 30-some, you know, by 10:30 at night,
It's a long evening.
People get tired. So I can see him moving it to say, oh, this one's going to be controversial. Let's make sure it gets up front so people are fresh.
Yeah.
But you could make an argument that if you think about like the senior center, we've got interior painting, exterior painting, we've got the room upstairs, and we've got the flooring. Putting them together might be a little easier for people. You know, maybe if that was one big thing, that might be a little easier to process and digest.
Or at least putting them
Yeah.
side by each, 31,
Yeah.
32, 33,
Yeah.
34.
Yeah, that's a valid point, though.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to do repairs of the senior center, why is it in all one
It's
article?
4 different articles.
Yeah, I
Scattered.
mean, just throw them in.
The only thing I can think of is people may want to have a debate about, do you really need the upstairs room?
Choices. You got to get.
I'll
those
do the
choices.
painting. I'll do the carpet. But do I really need the upstairs room? That would be the only logic I could see on making sure you got 4 articles. I mean, y'all at the select board combined the humidifier and the air conditioning for the utes.
Yeah, together.
Because that was all, I mean, that made sense. You can't do one without
Can't
the
do one
other.
without the other. It'd be a big mistake.
You're going to paint the inside, but you're not going to paint the outside? I mean,
Yeah, that would be an interesting. So, we're coming to the end. Marathon article show number 2. I didn't know how long it would take. I kind of liked the fact that we weren't rushed, because normally when we're trying to get 35, 40 articles into 1 hour, at the end it gets real quick. Conservation, yes, we know. But I appreciate your insight. I love Carly's reaction. You can tell she's becoming a FinCom member. How much?
It's no different than how I operate at home too. So,
I was just going to say that.
what did that shirt cost?
So,
Yeah.
well,
I thought it was a great show. Are we off?
nope.
Oh, I thought it was great.
It's become something that we are happy to go through, not to influence anybody. You know, we're not trying to say vote for the pool, don't vote for the pool. Vote for dogs, don't vote for dogs. I mean, you know, there's some things that you just have to take with a grain of salt, and if you're gonna have a dog kennel, you gotta have rules. Okay.
Yeah,
And maybe someday we'll put chickens and have eggs to feed.
yeah. Well, you know, Alan, you know this is that's one of the things at town meeting is you have to respect the opinion of every person that gets to that podium.
And that's what
may
makes
not
town
agree.
meetings so strong.
Yeah. You know?
I've always said I'm very comfortable bringing things to town meeting, because 250 people are very rarely all wrong.
Yeah.
You know. Well, it's been a long night. 2 shows. We've gotten through all the articles. We hope that we've taught you, provided for you some information. We have committed, and the FinCom has put up all the information on these articles that's presented to it the month before town meeting. Now, we're still working out details because it's on the FinCom folder, but we're looking to move it in the future onto the town meeting, the town website, so that anybody, I mean, after all, it's not the select board's money, it's not the FinCom's money, it's the residents' money. So you should have access to everything that we have. And feel free, as Mike said, call them, call us. We're happy, we're not sure we'll always agree with people, with everybody, but at least we'll tell you what the information was behind our decision. Thank you, and as always, to our 6 loyal viewers, may God bless. May tomorrow be a better night than tonight, and see you on the 25th at town meeting. Good night, all.
Not too long since I've been home. Been running all my life just searching for my soul.